Everyone, it's Grandmaster Ben Feingold. Welcome to another video in our series, The Ultimate Blunder, Premature Resignations. And this video, we're going to concentrate on fortresses. So if you're Magnus Carlsen, don't watch this video because you don't believe in this video. Doesn't believe in fortresses. Now in this position from the game Geary Shankland, one of the most famous games in the fortress genre, Geary played the move b6. And this knight is a goner. There's nothing you can do to save the knight. It's trapped by the white bishop, and soon white's going to play king g4, king takes knight, and black's going to lose his knight. And the reason Anish played b6 is because after king g4, he doesn't want black to play king e4. So now black is in zugzwang because black has to move his king somewhere where he can't play king e4, and then I just go take the knight. So understandably, or so you would think, black resigned here. Okay, and when he resigned, it was immediately explained by his opponent Anish Geary that this position is drawn because he has a fortress. It doesn't matter if he loses his knight. Now Shankland knew if he got his king to a8, that would be a draw. But he also knew he couldn't get his king to a8. For example, run to a8, run, go to a8. Oh no, bishop f4, you can't go to a8. Now, if he could go to a8, if white let him, see, white's a nice person. Then we just play king a8, king b8 the rest of the game. If you don't let me play king b8, it's stalemate. And Shankland knew that, and Geary knew that. What Shankland didn't know is after bishop f4, this is also a fortress. We just play king back to d8 or d7, and then back to c8. And if we can't play king d8, or we can't play king d7, that's stalemate. If we can play it, then we go back to c8. And we just move our king back and forth. There's nothing white can do. And Geary explained, this is a known draw, this is a fortress, your king just goes back and forth, and there's nothing I can do. And Shankland felt pretty bad about that. When Shankland got home from the tournament, the customs agent in San Francisco said, you can't resign, what are you doing? You're making us look bad here in San Francisco. So when you become super famous, then they tell you what you should do. So a bad resignation from one of the world's best players. He could have drawn the game even if he lost his knight on h3. Okay, let's look at another example of somebody resigning when they also had a fortress. Now here we have a game between two heavyweights, and I don't mean they weigh a lot. We got Kramnik versus Fiedler, two of the greatest Russian players in the last 30 years. And in this position, Kramnik is squeezing and squeezing like he always does, and he has an extra pawn, but it's opposite colored bishops. Now, Kramnik wants to take this pawn on a5, but his bishop is attacked. So he played bishop b7. And he said, I want to take this pawn on a5, and I'll be 2 pawns up. Now, how does black defend said pawn? Well, you could play bishop e1, and then we could play c5 check, or we could play king b6, and the bishop has to decide whether it's going to save the pawn or stop this pawn. It turns out c5 check probably just wins. Okay, and since he's going to lose his a5 pawn and be down 2 passed pawns on the queen's side, Fiedler resigned. However, black doesn't need his a5 pawn because there's not really a winning attempt for white here after he takes it. We can just move our bishop back and forth. I can do that. And if we try to queen our a pawn, well, trying is the first step to failure. There's nothing you can do. You can't play c5, can't play a7. If we try to get our king, let's say, over to a6, and then go to b7, and then push our pawn, your king is not going to b7. You can go back, and I'll go back. There's nothing you can do on the queen side. The 2 extra pawns are meaningless. My bishop stops you from moving them, and your king can't get to b7 to escort the a-pawn, because once you play king a6, I play king c7. So actually in this position, even though Svidler's losing his a-pawn, it's a rather simple draw. We just move our bishop back and forth, and there's no way that white can progress on the queen side. And surprisingly, Svidler resigned, realizing he was going to lose his pawn on a5, but not realizing that it doesn't matter. We don't need that pawn. We still draw the game down 2 pawns. There's many famous examples of being 1 or 2 pawns down in opposite bishop endings where it's a draw, but Svidler must not have thought of that. He thought, I'm playing Kramnik, Kramnik's squeezing me, Kramnik's winning another pawn, 2 extra pass pawns, it's time to resign. But it wasn't time to resign at all, it was time to draw. So black has a fortress on the queen side, there's no breakthrough, there's obviously no breakthrough on the king side, and the game should have ended in a draw. The engine was furious when he resigned. This is Grandmaster Ben